welcome back. We are having such a special fun day today. Today is our Live with Love session, and we're going to be talking about the grant process, love triangle, and we're going to review some of our top grant writing tips. Yes, I've got my cheat board behind me there, behind Diana, just to remind me so I don't forget anything that we're going to be talking about today. And we're also going to give you some tips on how you can show love to funders and to your organization as well. So this month we're focusing really on grant writing. That's our emphasis. And last month it was grant research, which is preparing you, getting you ready for doing your grant writing. And so really we wanted to focus on 5 main things that we think are really important as you dive into the grant writing process. What we'll do over the next couple of weeks is we'll drop in some extra tips because there is so much content. Typically, this is about a 2-hour workshop that we do on grant writing, not even grant research, but just the grant writing. So we want to really just kind of skim the surface this time, doing a little bit of an overview of the things that we know are like the easy wins. I love those terms, right? It's like, what are the things we can do that just help us get ourselves in shape for the great grant writing process. So how, I need to slow down for a second, take a breath. How are we going to show love to our funders and to our organization and to our people and to our mission? So what are the things that we can be doing that are really going to help create that culture of philanthropy, both within and then externally as well, and then with funders, really thanking them, acknowledging them for what they're doing to support the good work of your organization. So let's dive right into our top grant writing tips. So there are 5 of them. And what I wanted to start with on your grant writing is getting you ready to submit the proposal or the LOI. So assuming you've gone through the process of grant research, whether it's a formal process through Foundation Directory, or you've been piecing together this grants landscape for your organization, which you can do through GrantStation and GrantWatch and Googling and looking up, going in what I call the back way. So if you hear of nonprofits in your area that are getting funding, who are they being funded by, right? So if you kind of go down that rabbit hole, then you can see, well, there are some organizations that could be aligned with yours as well. So all these different mechanisms to put together where you're going to be going with your grant writing, who you're going to be submitting these proposals to. So preparing to propose. What does that look like? Well, what we're trying to avoid is you getting to the point where you see a potential grant out there that you want to write, or maybe an LOI. And it's funny, no matter how much we try and avoid this, they seem to kind of pop up out of nowhere. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 10 days to get this done. Okay, maybe it only happens. No, I can't imagine it only happens to me. I know it happens to all of us. But I'll try not to shake the table. Sorry, Diana. But imagine that something has come up. You're given a window of opportunity to submit a proposal. Oh, I've got a good example. How about when you set up a meeting with a funder and you're sitting face to face and they go, okay, great. So can you get me a proposal in a week? And suddenly you're thinking, oh my goodness. Okay, so what would that involve? And they say, well, we're going to need your financials and your 990 and your IRS determination letter and a list of your board members and their affiliations. And you're thinking, oh goodness, okay, so this is going to be, I've got a few 24-hour, or all-nighters coming up, right? Trying to pull this all together. So why don't we prep for that? Let's get all of that stuff together ahead of time. And then as soon as that opportunity comes along, you've got everything maybe in Dropbox, in a folder, or in Google Docs. You can just pull those out, supplement the proposal or the LOI. So what I mean by preparing to propose is, first of all, what are your funding buckets? I call them buckets. What are your funding needs? What are the priorities? So that if you are put in that situation where someone says, you know what, we'd like you to go ahead and submit an LOI, based on what you know about our foundation, what would you say are kind of the main areas that you need to be seeking funding for? And I hear some background noise. We'll just ignore it. Good. Okay. As long as you can still hear me, hopefully. But so what would those funding kind of buckets be? What are those items that really need funding? For it, in your organization, maybe what you're looking for is funding for an education program. Maybe you need computers, you need equipment. Maybe let's put aside the operational needs, because we know that those are few and far between, those opportunities that come to request funding. But really just be thinking about what that looks like. Is it for a programming team? Is it for supplies? Is it for trips because your organization takes maybe students out of state to show them other colleges? So what are the funding buckets, right? So really narrow that down. Maybe when I think of numbers, I think maybe three or four areas that really require some funding. So have those ready in your mind as well, because when you have an opportunity to get in front of someone, it's great to be able to just kind of reel those off quickly. And then when you're thinking about the materials that you're going to be needing and you probably need to present and supplement that proposal with, I'm thinking of things like a program budget, having your IRS determination letter handy, having maybe a couple of years worth of 990s available. You might need some audited financials for a particular foundation. Sometimes they ask for those. And remember, sometimes we can, if you're young, fairly young, haven't had a huge budget, and maybe haven't had an opportunity to get audited financials done, sometimes we can navigate that a little bit with reviewed financials. And if you don't know what that is, ask a CPA, because reviewed financials is kind of one step below going for a full audit. Typically, it's about half the cost. And sometimes foundations will accept that. So think about that as well. A list of your board members and their affiliations is helpful to have. And then any letters of support, photos, maybe any press releases, things like that are good to have, and just kind of keep them in that package where you know you can just pull them out as necessary. So that's number one, preparing to propose. All right, number two would be start building relationships. So well before you're going to really engage in the LOI and the grant writing process, we want you to connect with those funders. We know that you have about a 4 to 5 times better chance of being funded if you have made the effort to try and reach out to funders and establish a relationship with them. So really important. Now, they may be very busy. You may only get a few seconds on the phone with them. But imagine if you're on that grants committee and you see these proposals coming in, if something stands out in your mind or it kind of jogs your memory and you remember that, oh, I heard about this organization, it was interesting, or there's just a better chance of people making a connection. And actually, I've seen a really great job being done by individuals in the community that have built friendships even with some of these program officers and some of these foundations. So don't be shy about that unless you know for a fact that they don't invite questions or don't invite phone calls. So that would be number two. So number one is make sure you've got all of your bits and pieces together and somewhere easy that you can grab them or that somebody else can access them. Number two would be building the relationships. Number three is we're going to talk about the LOI. So an LOI is a letter of inquiry or a letter of intent. Often it's a filter. So foundations ask you to submit an LOI and then they determine whether you're a good fit for them and for their foundation. So it could be sometimes an LOI includes information that's going to be asked in a proposal. Sometimes it's totally separate. But the things you really need to remember for an LOI, submit it as early as possible. Couple of good reasons for that. One of them, probably the most important one, is a foundation team is reviewing those LOIs as they come in. They don't wait until the day that they were due. So if you submit yours early, it's possible, I've seen this happen, that they could review that and say, you know what, there were a couple of things missing. We're going to give you an opportunity to go back and add those things or maybe expand on this information a little bit. I actually had, I know I've told this story many times, but when we lived in North Carolina, I was working on a proposal and it was in an online system and the team was reading proposals as they're being written. So even though it wasn't complete and I hadn't hit submit, and I actually got a phone call from them saying, we're not really sure that this is the best project that you could be applying for. Is there something else we could support you with? And they gave us an opportunity to scrap that first LOI and resubmit, which was amazing. So just think about it in terms of that. And then the other thing is make sure you have someone reviewing your work. We are too close to what we do. We're in this world, we're entrenched in it every single day. We're in the weeds, which is what we're saying here in the office about how we just get so engaged and so involved. You really do need to be able to pull back and look at it through an objective lens. And sometimes we're not the best people to do that because we're just too close to it. So I would find someone to review it. Now, in my mind, the ideal scenario is 2 people. One person who knows the organization inside and out, and one person who doesn't at all, like a mom, a sister, a best friend, a colleague, a peer. Couple reasons. You may be assuming things. You may assume that people know things about your organization and you're alluding to them, but you haven't explained it. So think about that as well. Think about having someone close to your organization as well as someone who's external but is a friend and is on your side and wants to help. So that would be number 3, talking about LOIs. The fourth tip we have is regarding proposals. So let's say you've submitted an LOI and you've been invited to submit a proposal. I think the most compelling thing about a proposal is you have to be able to tell a really good story. So somehow you are moving people, right? There's a reason that you're doing what you're doing, that your heart is just completely immersed in this work every day. And our job is to convey that, because it's difficult to tell that story, especially in writing. But there are ways, if you use language, if you're able to tell testimonials, personal stories, anecdotes, even if they have to be anonymous, there are ways that you can start the narrative in a proposal and maybe close it out at the end and bring it back. And I can't remember what they call that. Comedians call that when they kind of refer back to something that they referenced at the beginning. Yeah, I can't remember. That's all right. Diana and I both are trying to think of what that term is. But so think about ways that resonate with people, right? And we're not trying to appeal to the entire world, but there are people that are going to read this and it's really going to resonate with them. So tell a very, very compelling story. The other thing is your grammar should be impeccable. And if you are not a good writer, find someone who is. And don't forget that, even photos to supplement, letters of support, anecdotes from the community. So you might be looking only for anecdotes from the recipients of your services or the constituents in your community. But what about board members? How about getting one of them to talk about how compelling and exciting it is and what drew them to this organization in the first place? All right, so we're talking about the ones where we have a little more wiggle room. There are some that have character limits and you're not going to have a whole lot of flexibility. Just work within that, but see if you can find ways within the different sections to bring that message home and talk about the story. All right, so that's number 4. So we talked about preparing to propose, getting your materials. Number 2, building relationships. Number 3, LOIs. Number 5, can you tell how linear I am? Yeah. Number 4, the proposal and telling a good story. I know, this is how my brain works. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if there's an acronym, even better. Maybe I'll think of one. So number 5 to me is, again, about the relationship. So it would be the follow-up and the reporting. So what are you doing, first of all, to thank your funders? Remember that many of them are looking for you to market them in a way, right? To thank them publicly. And a lot of them have stipulations about that. I would get those, when we see organizations receiving funding and I don't see an organized follow-up mechanism, I start to get a little bit concerned, because many of the foundations have requirements and requests about how they want you to convey the message that you receive funding from them. Some of them don't want you to do it at all. Some of them have particular parameters of what that should look like. And sometimes there's a particular amount of time in which you need to post it either on your website or social media, or they're asking for screenshots of when you've actually posted that you've received grant funding. So make sure that as soon as you get that grant award, not only are you somewhere noting down in your calendar that you have a grant report due and give yourself a good month to start working on that, but then also what are their requirements and are you going to be doing that or is someone else, and make sure that you're nice and tight on that. The thank yous, of course, they go without saying. My recommendation is a phone call. Start immediately with a phone call, but they must have a thank you letter on the way to them within 24 hours. That is leading practice. It's really what needs to happen in this industry, and I think sometimes we're a little soft on it, but it's really important. And you can't thank people enough. So you don't need a report to be the only reason that you're reaching out to a foundation. How about just dropping them a thank you anytime during the year or something exciting happened at the organization. And if you're already doing an e-blast or you're already doing a newsletter to your donors, go ahead and repurpose that information and send it out to your foundations as well. And if you have constituents, kids may be involved, they can write thank you letters. Anyway, lots of ways to thank and love your donors. So the whole purpose here is really thinking about how are you loving your organization, and you're doing that by presenting it in the best possible light, getting funding for your organization, telling great stories. But then how do we love our funders too? And the way we do that, and really what they want is for you to do a good job with those funds, but they also want to get to know you and be connected to you as a really an agent of change in your community. So just be thinking about how you're gonna manage that. Okay, so I'll just wrap up really quickly and kind of go through these again. Preparing to propose. We talked about funding needs and buckets, your grants materials. We talked about building relationships, which was number 2. We talked about the LOI process. We talked about the proposal process, which was number 4, and then the reporting and follow-up and the thank you, which was number 5. So those are the grant writing tips for this week. Again, it's a bit of an overview, and I think we'll be doing a deeper dive over the next few weeks that'll really help you feel comfortable with the grants that you're writing and the proposals that you're submitting. And I do want to remind you, today was our grant process love triangle. So welcome to Live with Love was how we started this session off. And I did want to mention a very special opportunity that I have today, which is to attend the 4 Kids. It's a nonprofit here in South Florida. Their Valentines Day, which is really exciting. And they really are champions for making sure that every child has a home. And I'm super excited to be part of that today. So I'm so grateful to be given that opportunity by a dear friend of mine. And then, of course, a reminder to you to join our community forum on Facebook. And that is open. It is free. It's full of, resources, questions, answers, input. Somebody asked last week about online auctions, I think it was. Wow. That's an area that I've never even kind of delved into, but I would love, I was following along because I thought, okay, I need to learn about this. So any questions that you may have, and even a community where you can network with peers, you can ask questions. This is a safe space. There is no judgment. We all want to help one another. And yes, it's powered by Kannico, but we're not looking to get anything out of it except build community, which is really, really important to us. So please think about joining our community forum and invite your colleagues. And also remember that this and every single Friday, we are going to be uploading videos to our Global Good channel. So you can subscribe through the link in this section, and we will see you right here next week for another Ask the Expert series. This week, I flew solo talking about grant writing, but keep an eye out because we are going to be getting some interesting experts in to share their expertise and their knowledge. And again, we're here to serve you. So anything we can do, happy to help in any way. Thank you for joining us right here at the Kannico Agency.